Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto 2 Blue Vortex manga chapter review. This one is going to be for chapter 26, which is called Those Like-Minded. So again, remembering where we are, this is going to be the second of 4 chapters in this particular volume. And it seems to be this kind of in-between arc where we're just catching up with the characters in between arcs. We're setting up what we're doing next, which seems to be more directly set up here as being, I guess, Ada and Mamushi. They're actually going to go ahead with that being the next attack or battle that happens, and that is actually quite exciting, which I think helps to explain why the cliffhanger is what it is for this chapter. Overall, I thought that this was a good chapter. I don't think I was blown away by any particular, moment or scene that we got here. There were some slight frustrations about the fact that they didn't really follow up with Momoshiki, and it seems like the way they're going with that is actually that we will find out what Momo's response to the deal was, or is, probably when the fight with Jura is happening, because I can't see any other way that just randomly comes out before it becomes relevant. They seem to definitely set it up here for, yeah, we're not doing any immediate kind of follow-up on this. So there's a frustration there just because we were waiting so long for Momoshiki. He's there for a little bit, they do it in an interesting way, and then we cut away from it for a while. But there are other interesting elements, like Inojin is actually, they use him quite well. They take him in an interesting direction in this chapter, and that worked really well. Just highlighting what you can do in these kind of in-between arcs where you're able to sort of take stock on, oh yeah, what characters across the board are in play, not in play, what can we do? There's some good stuff in this one, I think, even if, like I said, I'm not sure I would highlight any particular scene of this as being like, this is a absolutely amazing scene. No problem really with the chapter. It's just kind of one of those role player chapters, but it's a bit better than just middle of the road, that sort of idea. So yeah, on the cover we have Momoshiki, which is a little bit frustrating, but again, that is how these chapters tend to go. When you get a reveal at the end of a chapter, they typically do the cover then for the next one is this character. Even if Momoshiki's not really in this one, I think it makes sense that, hey, he's back in play. We'll see when we get back around to him. So yeah, getting into the chapter itself, we start off with the preview page that we had for the chapter, which is Inojin going to visit Himawari. So he gives her this special honey that's always sold out, and he knows that it's her favorite. He says he was really lucky this time, but you get the impression reading into that a little bit more. He's been building up to that for a while. He's been keeping his eye on the stock of this particular honey so that he could specifically get it and give it to her as this special gesture, because clearly there is a romantic interest here between these two. Right now, we're primarily focusing on it from Inojin's kind of point of view towards Himawari, but I think you can tell that she does like him too. Maybe it'll be a bit of a surprise when maybe eventually, potentially, she discovers that the interest is romantic on his side, and that might, force her to kind of talk about her feelings. But I think it's definitely in play. This doesn't feel like just a randomly thrown together ship. This definitely feels like there's been a little bit of a setup here. I think this is actually quite good for both characters. I think it is good for Himawari to have a stronger connection with a character who is not just a member of her family. In that, like, okay, she's been hanging out with Team Inoshika-cho, but to actually have a particularly kind of stronger relationship with Inojin, I think is good for her. And given that they also seem to highlight the idea that she maybe the focus on protecting someone she cares about is helping her to focus on her Kurama power training, this actually could be good for her as well. And then on the other side of things, Inojin, it helps for him to break out of just being in the Inoshika-cho mold, and that, hey, he has a connection to, Himawari, the sister of, like, the main character in the overall series. That makes him stand out a lot more from being I think you would definitely say, as of like at least a couple of chapters ago, far and away the least interesting member of Inoshika to a certain degree. Just because Cho, of course, has her kind of personality and kind of stands out. She's friends with Sarada. Shikadai obviously is obviously going to be presented as like the leader of the group, like Shikamaru-esque, and they're kind of continuing that trend there and is close with Boruto. Inojin felt a little bit like he needed something extra, and here it is. And especially with the injury being protected and healed by Himawari arc, they actually seem to be going somewhere with this. I don't mind this, and I actually would like to see this be something that they kind of commit to a little bit more. They definitely seem to be doing it with Inojin here, and I'm hoping they also tie this into Himawari's arc as well, because she is kind of struggling with her powers, and it'd be cool if it is more about like, yeah, to protect people. It helps to direct her powers maybe. That could be cool. I'm pretty sure the age gap between them is only actually like 2 years, because Boruto and Himawari aren't like separated by like a huge amount of years. And then I'm pretty sure Inojin is also like slightly younger than some of the other members of his quote unquote generation. So it's not a giant age gap, but I'd have to check the exact specifics on that if we actually know the characters' ages. But either way, like I don't think they're going to do anything super intense with this anytime soon. It's just actually this is a cool dynamic to have in the background here, just to create a few character connections that aren't obviously kind of apparent prior to a lot of this stuff. But we continue with this. As he says goodbye to Himawari, he walks out and meets one of Kashin Koji's toads, who it's Kashin Koji talking through the toad, and it's basically like, hey, I already know the answers to this, but I just want to see your reaction and confirm some things. You have affectionate feelings towards Uzumaki Himawari in the romantic sense, do you not? He gets all flustered and blushes. Your reaction kind of proves everything I want to know. Do you wish to protect her? Well, duh, of course. Good, that's all. Our interests are aligned. If you want to know more, come with me. And Inojin gets reversed summoned to the Boruto Kashin Koji hideout. So they're bringing him in effectively as a communication specialist, because they want him to facilitate them talking to Shikamaru in the village, because, you know, they're working together. And Ino has kind of stopped helping Shikamaru from a bunch of chapters ago, so they need someone else, so Inojin is coming in on board. I guess they're kind of using, to a certain degree, the fact that he cares about Himawari, so it will be interesting to see, like, do they give him training in return for this? Are they actually going to, like, help him get to a point where he can actually protect her? As in, like, will they teach him techniques? Or is it more that, like, by helping us, you will help us to help everyone, which includes Himawari? Or is it more directly like you'll be able to help her? Because it would be kind of cool if like we actually got some real development and he actually got to have this kind of advanced training and take him to the next level, which would be interesting. But yeah, Kashin Koji introduces himself. He's fighting to protect the planet from the divine trees. Boruto highlights that this might come across as a threat, but you can't really leave this place by a physical entrance. I'll take you back once we're done here, and we cut away from this for now. So interesting. Inojin is going to get involved with Boruto, which is kind of exciting. But we cut over to the Divine Tree characters talking. So it's Hidari and Jura primarily talking, but Mamushi is in the background as well. So Jura's crying. And the question is, hey, what are you reading? What's caused this to happen? We find out that Jura has been reading a novel. And even though it's a fictional tale, it's revealed he underestimated it. It has touched his heart somehow without him realizing it. And that he kind of makes the connection back with like, oh yeah, we all kind of felt the emotions of Matsuri during the whole Konohamaru incident. And that some of those emotions are actually able to come out just by reading things. So they're gaining a more advanced, a broader understanding of love here, that like, okay, you can have it by your reactions, interactions with people, but also just reading made up stories about people can also make you feel things as well. That's interesting to them as they try to gain this understanding of what maybe seems to be something that they maybe never will truly understand. So it's interesting. They've got a glimpse of love, that sort of idea. He thanks kind of Matsuri to a certain degree, you know, that he gained an understanding through her tears of like what they are, what they mean. And he's like, is that icky that I said that? And Hidari's like, no, it's intriguing. Because again, he did have a bit of a reaction like a chapter or two ago at the end to some of the stuff. But no, he seems to be on board with this. This is not enough to fully understand and control love, which obviously that's the problem there, them trying to control it too much. That shows the kind of lack of understanding kind of by itself. But then we switch over to Mamushi, and he's like, I've gained an understanding myself. I don't think it's really about love or anything like that, but I think I know why my instinct chose that woman, Ada, as my target. I want to devour her just in the same sense of simply, not just in the sense of consuming her alone, but for control. I want to make her superior genetic information mine. I don't give a squat about love or all that stuff. I just feel that we divine trees ought to thrive more as a species. And this actually interests Jura, who's like, thrive. Interesting. That might be an interesting way to learn about love. That the idea that like, just by maybe consuming people, we'll gain their like maybe understanding of these things at the same time. We might be able to evolve further to the point where we maybe better understand and control these kind of topics. It's interesting to see like what the end game of this kind of arc with these Divine Tree characters and their growing emotions, feelings, intelligence actually is going to kind of build towards. With Mamushi, they're definitely getting across the idea of almost like his obsessive maybe love with Ada. That might be the angle they maybe take with it. Interesting that they're actually more leaning away from love and more into just genetic information. He views Ada as being, I guess, the powers that she has. She has like these, you know, two crazy abilities in terms of like the ability to entrance people around her, and then obviously the crazy full scope of that, like with omnipotence and what it can do. That's maybe more the angle that he has. Is it more about power deep down? We have to wait and see. Obviously, when we get to see them more directly interact, Ada and Mamushi will get more of the direct interaction, I guess. But we continue. We go back to Inojin, who is now helping them with a mind transmission jutsu to facilitate a conversation between Kashin, Koji and Shikamaru, who's going in basically for the debriefing from the last mission with the basically elders of the Leaf Village. But also the who is this? It's the daimyo's personal chamberlain, Lord Kobu, is also here as well. Kashin Koji highlights that you might lose your position as Hokage, which would be bad. It's much better. It helps us, if you are Hokage, to facilitate, succeeding in all of their plans, using Kashin Koji's plans to their best degree. But they have to wait and see how this exactly plays out. So, of course, when we get in here, the idea is you apparently planned and orchestrated this mission in the sand arbitrarily on your own. Why did you do that? Why are you kind of doing stuff without fully getting us up to speed? And they feel, I guess, Shikamaru is beginning to act a little bit on his own. They're also, as we kind of find out, suspicious about things because of, like, say, they had Boruto in custody and then he somehow randomly got away. They think there's a mole in the village and they're trying to lead the conversation in the direction of that being revealed. So they kind of focus on the idea of like, I'm just an observer here, questioning your ability to carry out responsibility as the head village. Also, maybe the idea of, are shinobi villages actually important these days? Shikamaru fires back, of course, with Divine Tree characters. We need to deal with them. Of course, we need the ninja villages, obviously. And he just felt that, like, based on the information that they had, he organized the mission in the right timing to get it done, and that they basically succeeded with minimal casualties, of course. They focus in on the intel. Where did you get it from? Shikamaru is told directly, don't mention my abilities at all. So he has to basically just be like, for everyone's safety, I can't say that. But I take full responsibility for everything that happened. I used my intuition to organize this, mission, and did it in the most responsible way I could, effectively. They're very concerned about the source, but also that they hope the source isn't Boruto, because, hey, why does he know so much about the Divine Trait characters? Is he secretly in league with them? Is he plotting to take down the village from within? They're very, very suspicious that, the details of the mission don't seem to really matter all that much. They just want this deeper kind of intel. They're deeply distrustful of everything, of course, in a kind of frustrating way where you're like, oh, they're always causing issues, aren't they? But in this case, I think you sort of get it, because we know that the switcheroo has happened and kind of why that's required for people to be in this kind of secret group together, Shikamaru and everyone. But from their perspective, yeah, I guess it does come across as really suspicious that all this stuff is happening and they don't really know why, who really is doing it. But it is a bit of a frustrating one in terms of how much time are we going to spend on this arc going forward. Shikamaru speaks up, and Konohamaru speaks up, and Shikamaru goes to stop him, but then Kashin Koji's like, no, let him speak. Let him, draw their attention. They'll direct their ire at him as the actual kind of field leader out during the mission. Whereas you were just kind of back at home kind of organizing it. Let him take some of the kind of flack here, so just let him speak. And he talks about how Boruto saved his life on the last mission, and that his personal opinion is that he doesn't believe Boruto plans to harm Konoha, of course. They just immediately present their already locked in opinion of, we can't believe you would do anything to side with Boruto. What are you doing? I can't believe you would listen to a criminal. There's no room for debate. Even though Konohamaru just stated the facts of his meeting with Boruto, basically. This is where Kobu more directly highlights that, hey, the mission, okay, was kind of a success, but actually, if there is a mole in the village who's maybe facilitating some of this stuff happening, that's not good either, because it speaks to a major security problem. That's what we need to sort out. So Konohamaru is going to go in for an interrogation first, and then basically everyone else is going to have an interrogation. Anyone who had contact with Boruto. So everyone's getting a major interrogation as they try to figure out, basically, how did Boruto escape from the Leaf Village custody from before? So of course we know it's a lot of it is on Shikamaru, and it's kind of how long will he stay undercover in this regard. And now that there's this whole interrogation stuff happening. Again, are we going to spend parts of chapters going forward going through these investigations and stuff like that, figuring this out, having Shikamaru get outed, and what does that really mean? And then obviously it's very complicated because the omnipotent switcheroo could be unswapped at any time, and then how does that change things? But then the other big point as well is it's beginning to feel like the information that Naruto's not actually dead is going to gradually reach everyone, and that would certainly change things as well. So there's a few moving parts here that are quite interesting, but we'll continue on. So Inojin ends the communication and is like, how many rules did I just break doing this kind of basically unlicensed personal mind transmission outside the purview of the sensory unit? But they just highlight that, hey, we have to operate outside the rules. You're involved with us now, so you have to be okay with this. The enemy will do anything they need to do, so we're going to do the same. And he realizes that, we have to do this to protect the people that we want to protect, especially Himawari, because we're going up against someone like Jura. Yeah, we have to do whatever we need to do. Inojin has to have power and resolve, which makes me feel like, okay, so are we training him? Are we going to do more than he's just the facilitator for communications? Interesting to see how much we follow up on this, of course. But then we get into this interesting conversation. Kashin Koji confronts Boruto in terms of Momoshiki. You offered him some deal, did you not? Boruto's like, ... Relax. I'll hold up my end. And I'm assuming that what he means by that is I'll hold up my end of like my deal with you, Kashin Koji. I don't think that's really referencing the deal that he offered Momoshiki, because he's purposefully not telling Kashin Koji about this situation. It is the only mention of this, and that again they don't highlight what exactly happened. The assumption is that I guess Momoshiki took the deal. Why wouldn't he take the deal? So what is the situation here? Does Kashin Koji know that Boruto is going to like sacrifice himself effectively to take down Jura, or is there something more with this? Boruto then goes into the thing he seems to have a bigger problem with in the middle of all of this, which is just that, hey, you hold back information at kind of inconvenient times and stuff like that. How many were supposed to die during the Sand mission? And he just highlights, I guided things towards the most likely path for Sarada to awaken her Mangekyo. And this is to avoid a future where there's no way out of many more people getting killed. So it's sort of the idea of, yeah, Boruto feels bad because effectively they're choosing almost like ahead of time a certain timeline that has the best outcome. But every single timeline or sequence of events is going to have some downs. Some losses will happen to ultimately achieve big victories. So how do they choose the right timeline in terms of it's okay for these people to die if these people don't die? And in this case, it's sort of the unfortunate acceptance of like, did Yodo have to die? And that they purposefully chose it because she was the only one who died on this mission, you know, like quote unquote. That doesn't sit right with Boruto, that they're making those sort of decisions. But from Kashin Koji's perspective, it's Yodo dying helped avoid a situation where like X many other people died. And they just argue back and forth about this. Clearly, I get the impression this is a discussion they've had a few times. They are wasting time. We'll move on. What's the latest from Shikamaru? And that is that Konohamaru is in the interrogation room, and Shikamaru feels that he's probably up next. But for now, he is free overall. They again reiterate that the battle coming will go better with you as Hokage, because coming up next, in about 1 week from now, the divine tree known as Mamushi will appear in Konoha. His target is Ada. I will now tell you his abilities and how to deal with them. And it's like boom, boom, boom. Kashin Koji, Boruto, Shikamaru, Inojin. They're all going to be brought up to speed on the powers of Mamushi and how to deal with them. Now, this is interesting because Mamushi's target is Ada. Ada has Demon as a bodyguard. Does she need all these other people constructing a plan to deal with Mamushi? Clearly, this seems to suggest that Mamushi is going to have some sort of a way to counter Demon, who otherwise has been effectively presented as like the most powerful character in the series. So the idea that, you know, the power matchup might actually not be favorable for Demon is kind of interesting to me. And then what are the other characters going to be able to offer that, you know, turns the tide potentially in their favor? It's also, I think, just interesting that they are making a purposeful choice here, that it seems like Mamushi on his own will attack Konoha. As in, they seem to more be holding back on the idea of Hidari and Jura potentially will come as a duo to create maybe 2 fights for the final stage of this happening. And that they want to get a lot of the extra ones out of the way first, which is kind of interesting to me. But anyway, we then move into some of the final scenes here. So we have Ada talking to Sarada and Sumire, and of course Demon is there in the background. So she wanted to talk to them just over the whole drama between the two of them over their feelings about Boruto. She thinks this is the best romance gossip in the whole village. She has to talk to these two. So when will you profess your love to Boruto? She says this to Sarada. And Sarada's like, what do you mean when? I didn't say anything about that. Ada kind of highlights, but you know, you said, you basically confessed to Sumire that you were going to do something like this. So what's the situation? Sarada just says, you know, it's the last thing Boruto needs right now. I don't want to risk saying the wrong things and things getting weird between us. Boring. What about you, Sumire? And she says, it depends on the timing, but knowing me, I might just blurt it out. This is exciting to Ada. And Sumire continues and is like, I think Sarada's actually the same, regardless of what she says. And And Ada's like, actually, I think you're right. Given her prior glomping offensive, and this shocks Sarada, but then it's the truth. This is sort of what started this in the first place, was Sumire being a little bit taken aback by Sarada kind of launching herself at Boruto into that kind of hug a bunch of chapters ago. So what's most important is Boruto's feelings. He's got bigger problems for the foreseeable future, which makes sense, but I think the counterpoint to this is obviously that I think Boruto, who's in a very self-sacrificing mood these days, might actually need to hear the two of them express their feelings to him so that he has some sense of actually wanting to live for the future. And that's the interesting dynamic between these kind of characters here. Ada completely shifts the mood here. Speaking of love, I ask again, you two aren't captivated by me, are you? As in, my powers don't work on you. You are not, just by my powers, inclined towards liking me. And they're like, have we been found out? Demon's watching carefully as this happens. And we get the little recap here of Shikamaru basically saying, make sure you're not found out, especially by Demon. If her charm doesn't work on you, it means we can kill Ada. Again, if we have to. You get what I'm saying? If they catch on, your lives might be in danger, and this is basically what we're going to see happen. They have been found out, because as Ada points out here, it's obvious. How else are you two able to talk about liking someone other than me in front of me? It simply isn't possible at all. Sumire and Sarada look at each other. Sarada jumps into action, activates the Mangakyo Sharingan, but before she can actually truly use the power, Demon flies in between them, jumps past them but around the couch, basically to get a shot at both their necks. So he just grabs the two of them by their necks and has complete control of the situation just like that in a second. And Demon says to Sarada, you tried to do something, didn't you, Sarada, with that vaunted Mangakyo Sharingan of yours? Whatever it is, it's useless if you die before you launch it. So we're highlighting once again Demon's speed, and that, yeah, he is effectively one of, if not the most powerful characters in the series. And we have to set that up again and make it clear that's where he is going into this upcoming fight. But again, the situation is just, it seems like from a power level perspective, if Mamushi attacks Ada, Demon should be able to just deal with Mamushi. Unless Mamushi has a direct counter for Demon, which he might have because he's based on Bug. Mamushi is based on Bug. Bug was the one who sort of looked over Ada and I guess Demon, so he would be the one to sort of know the intricacies of this. And I'm pretty sure, was he the one who, when he did explain Demon's powers, he was the one who maybe said something about that. So it kind of makes sense that they're bringing this kind of full circle here of just like, okay, now the kind of empowered Bug, effectively Mamushi, might actually be the one to get an advantage over Demon, which is why Kashin Koji feels like he has to prepare everyone else to take out Mamushi. And that will be very interesting to see how that all happens, because what are they doing with this as the end of this chapter? In that, look, Demon is not going to kill Sarada. He's not going to kill Sumire here. They're definitely going to be used elsewhere in the story. How does Ada feel about this? Is she okay with this happening? Or are we just going to actually talk this out? As in, okay, I understand what you were doing, but we need to settle things here. But what does Ada want out of this? Because I think she does want actual friends in the same way she wants an actual kind of romance. So I'm wondering, will she try to talk this out, and if there might be some sort of reveal about how okay, yeah, we stayed around you a lot initially because there was the chance we might need to kill you and we were the only ones who could actually get close to you properly. But actually, given that we don't need to kill you, because they kind of need Ada for other stuff, broadly speaking, and while she's a threat, quote unquote, it's more of just a potential threat if things go in very specific directions. She's not the most dangerous character in the entire world. It's mostly just that her powers are so wide in scope and powerful that yeah, they potentially needed someone who could kill her, because otherwise it was kind of an impossibility. Um, might she actually just be okay with this, given that actually they get on relatively well, and this is just going to be the evolution of their kind of situation as we go forward, as in they can now be maybe more truthful with each other, that everything's now out on the table. She knows that her powers don't work on these two. She might actually want to know why they don't work on them, and because if it doesn't work on these two, given that they're not Otsutsuki's, which is, as far as she's aware, the only like way her powers otherwise don't work, what's special about these two? And if she could figure that out, she could figure out how to make other people also maybe not feel that way about her. But then she also, Ada's a weird one where like she also doesn't like the loss of control, but does want the ability for actual relationships. And it'll be interesting to see what goes on here, because she goes from being like really interested in the two of them to like the second last panel on the last page. It's very much like there's no emotion in that look as she looks over at the two of them. And she's aware that, I guess, the two of them are threats to her, because I guess if Sarada was to let off her Mangekyo Sharingan power, I guess it is powerful enough to just almost like kill pretty much any character, but it takes a little bit of a build up. So it is a threat, of course. So again, what's the takeaway from this is I'm pretty sure it just has to be a conversation where they just, you know, it changes their dynamic a little bit. Are they going to go full on like Ada becomes more of a threat once more, rather than the rather stable situation she's been in for the last while? I'm not sure. Just because we do need her. It feels like if we're going to reverse omnipotence, she's going to have to come back into play because of that. But, you know, what is the situation there? I do think the main thing, though, at the end here is probably just to highlight that Sarada got this major power-up that allows her to sort of fight on the front lines, like Boruto and Kawaki, and Demon is still, like, more powerful than her. So that's the kind of point they're making here. So does Ada need protection? Actually, this is because of the way Mamoshi's powers work. She will need protection because Mamoshi counters Demon, so other people are required. And maybe this is where she gets the two girls here to help her out, and this is why Kashin Koji is also needed kind of elsewhere. Not really sure. Because otherwise, like, Ada has been mostly like not a villain really ever in the story, just because of how much of her arc is about kind of working around her powers but still within her powers. That like she wants the relationship with Kawaki, but once Kawaki gets back to the way he once was, that's kind of what her focus is. But Kawaki's not really involved in her story necessarily. That's the intriguing part about this, is like, where do we go? Because this has to be followed up on. This is not like a Momoshiki thing where like, okay, yeah, what they did is ultimately, I guess, one way to do it is just to leave the answer to that deal until much later on. This is like, we have to jump in next chapter with the resolution to this. And I'm interested to see where they go with it, because Ada's interest in Sarada and Sumire has been, I think, fun, and this is kind of one of the bigger mysteries that we've been building towards. So I think that's probably the big thing that probably has to come out here, which is, yeah, what's so special about you two that the power didn't work on the two of you? Is it because they basically truthfully love Boruto and that her powers can't reverse someone's love type thing? That would be interesting, but we have to wait and see. So they're my thoughts on the chapter. I do think there probably will be equally more important stuff in chapter 27, and especially probably 28, which will probably be the lead in to, I guess, the Mamushi fight, probably in like 29, 30. That's my guess for how this is going to go forward. But let me know what you thought of this one. some of these kind of key elements here? Do you think we're going to get the reveals about Sarada and Sumire anytime soon? What are your thoughts on Inojin and Himawari and that whole dynamic, and the new role for Inojin within the story, I think, as well? What are they going to do with Mamushi that makes him unique within the story? And then I suppose the interrogation of all the kind of key people in the village, what's going on with that plot as well. But otherwise, that has been the video. Thanks for listening, and bye.